All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome and welcome to our guest, our speaker, who I'll let Ted introduce in a few minutes. And that's all. So we'll get started right off with our Rotary Minute. Sonia, do you want to speak from there?
I think I'm going to speak from here. I think I have a loud enough voice. I was going to tell everyone how this Rotary Club started. It was chartered in 1995, and we were sponsored by the Essex Club. And they started first by asking a few of the people from Williston that at that time you had to have different classifications. If there was somebody in real estate, you had to figure out how you were going to become a member, even though you were doing real estate, maybe senior real estate or whatever. But at that time, you couldn't have two members with the same classification. That has all changed. And they first met at the Residence Inn, which I don't know what hotel it is now, but if you go underneath the interstate on 2A, towards Heinsberg, there's a hotel on your left, and that was the Residence Inn. And they met in a small room. Residence Inn provided breakfast. And Mr. McEwen from Essex Junction was always there to make sure everything was done correctly. And they finally, I have their list of the charter members and also application for membership and the bylaws. And that was the original. And I was not at the original meeting when they started. But I've met several times at the Residence Inn, and I went to the meeting at the Inn at Essex where we actually became a club, the Essex Junction, with their sponsorship. So even though my badge says charter, I was not in the original group that met originally. But because I was there, I guess they gave me a charter membership. At that time, we had Bill Skiff was the president, and he was from the guidance area. Abbott Brayton was from insurance, and he was the vice president. And Derek Kirby was from construction area, and they were the leadership of the beginning club. I think it was harder at that time because you couldn't just come and join, and you had to be asked. Sam Cleary, who was the CEO of the Realtor organization in Williston, invited me, but you had to be invited, and then you had to sit before a group of 3 usually members, and then they would talk to you and tell you what was required. At that time, you had to be present at 80% of the meetings. And so I'm glad it's become more lax, and I'm happy that everybody can join. So that's a quick minute of how we began.
Thank you, Sonia. What a gift to have the very start of our club right here in this room. That's awesome. And next I'll have Ted, or Ted, go ahead. There he is. Introduce our speaker.
Good morning. So our speaker today is Matt Boulanger, our town planner. And I'll tell you a little bit about him in 1 second, but just to show how much the town has changed. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Richmond, starting in 1965. Couldn't start before that. The town Williston was a farming community when I was growing up. And I always thought it was a little strange because Richmond had a village, and I grew up in the village, right here, 4 Corners in Richmond. But Williston had a village, but I never saw anybody on the sidewalks whenever we went. And we came here often because my cousins and my uncle owned a farm in Williston. But it's changed remarkably. Where LL Bean is now, when I was 15 years old. I got hired, me and my brother Tim got hired by a guy who had been hired by the horse farm that was there at the time to hay that field. It was one of the worst 2-day jobs I've ever had. The hay baler kept kicking back. The wagon was connected directly to it, and it was like Lucy in the Chocolate Factory type day. But anyway, now things are very, very different in Williston. And I'm glad that Matt's here because still on the select board, we still get people who think that what develops in Williston and how it's being developed is directly by decree of the select board. We've had people be very upset with us that the select board is allowing another steakhouse in town. And I'm always amazed that, you know, these are, by the way, the same people who would then come in and advocate vigorously for private property rights. But in any event, but Matt is the planning director for the town. He's worked here since June of 2008. He became director in August of 2018. He's also Williston's zoning administrator, and he works on all matters related to planning in Williston, including current and long-range planning. Something he's working on now for all of us. I'm not sure, actually, I read something that, are you getting a master's degree or?
I have one.
Have one. You need to update your LinkedIn.
Pay increase? There's probably an old bio on that.
Yeah, so
It's been a while.
Matt claims he has a master's. He's worked in public service for his entire career, in Vermont as well as, in Cape Cod and Montana. So Matt is going to fill us in on, what's going on with planning, and, so without further ado, Matt Boulanger.
Thanks for the introduction, Ted, and yeah, I'll have to look at LinkedIn. It should say that I have that degree. I finished it right as COVID was starting. But it was an online degree through Zoom, so I had 3 years of Zoom experience before we were all plunged into it in 2020 through the University of Washington, and it was a terrific experience. So I wanted to take this opportunity to touch on maybe 2 or 3 things that are going on in Williston right now, sort of briefly, and then open up to some questions, and I can be fairly brief today. The first thing is that the last time I spoke to this group, we were just getting ready to get started with our public engagement process for the 2025 town plan, this project that we've dubbed Williston 2050. And yes, it's also a bumper sticker. And yes, I have some for everybody. I'd like to have them. They stick to coffee mugs. They on pretty well. And, you know, we named the effort Williston 2050 because that's about 25 years from when this plan will start. And planning by its nature is a long range effort. And things that you decide to do now are things that may show up really obviously on the landscape and in the programming of the town starting around 2050. You know, we inherit the decisions that those before us have made for good or ill. And we want to have that sort of long-range outlook when we're thinking about taking on big multi-year efforts or policy directions that you might have to sort of be steady with for a long time in order to achieve their goals. So Williston 2050 is the name of that town planning effort. It does have its own website, which is williston2050.com, and I'm always going to be referring folks there for information about that town plan effort. Williston2050.com will get you there. So in the fall, I came to this group. We filled out some postcards from the future. We talked a little bit about the upcoming roundtable events. We ended up actually holding one of those events right here in this room last fall. We had a terrific time with those. We also put a survey out into the world and have done a few other activities with our Williston citizens to collect public sentiment, opinion, feelings about policy directions for the town that can be used as part of our writing of the plan. And quietly, a little bit quietly in January and February and running into final version in April, we actually produced a report. This is the Williston 2050 Engagement Insights Report. This report is relatively short. You can read the first few pages of it for the summary. You can go deeper into it to look at some charts and graphs. And on the Williston2050.com website, you can also download every single written comment and survey response that went into this and see scans of every single one of those big sheets of paper that we wrote notes on, everything that we did last fall, rolling into the town plan. But we really designed this report so that anybody who wanted to know what did my neighbors and fellow citizens have to say about Williston could spend as little or as much time as they wanted learning about this. And this document is also what we're using with the Planning Commission as we now begin to draft the chapters of that plan. And we've made that a very transparent process as well. So there are links on the 2050.com website that go right to the live Word documents as we draft all of the different chapters of this plan. It's our mess. They are in various forms of roughness or completion, but they are available for anybody who wants to look at to do so, and then to reach out to us with comments and say, well, I'm not so sure about that, or did you think about this or that? So encourage folks to interact with us as we work in our planning commission meetings to draft the plan. And this is really every meeting agenda of the planning commission from now probably through the mid-fall involves bringing these chapter drafts back and talking over them more and refining them. And we're also running some of those drafts through our other boards like Housing Committee, Energy Committee, Conservation Commission, et cetera. So a couple of highlights that came out of this document and maybe things that might encourage you to take a look at it that I wanted to talk about today. We asked questions at the roundtable events around a couple of key topic areas. One was economy and jobs. And out of that activity, the number one priority for economy and jobs, 29% of the responses were about having economic diversity and particularly support for small business and local business in town. So comments we heard about, let's not just have chain businesses in Williston, let's do things with the way we manage our land use and our public investment to support and encourage those small local businesses to be part of the fabric of the town. And coming right in behind that at 24% was one we talked about more in another section, but it still came up a lot in economy, which was housing and particularly affordable housing. An understanding that the workforce needs a place they can afford to live at the sort of rate of pay that they're going to get from the economy that Williston can produce. So a lot of understanding from our participants that those two things are deeply connected. Another one we talked about was homes and people. Like I said, people wanted to talk about housing before we even got there, but no surprise, number one priority, 53% of responses, affordable housing. More middle-class homes, more one-story homes, more affordable rents and housing, more affordable, smaller housing, and making it economically feasible for those who contribute to the tax base to afford housing and young families, starter homes. We heard a lot about this. How do you get to an ownership starter home in a place like Williston, in an economy like we have, and where properties cost what they cost? And the plan will do some work to try to address that. Energy and the environment was another topic. Number one subgroup of that was energy efficiency, resilience, more solar generation, more green energy. And coming in right behind that was conservation, more land conservation, more conservation of energy, energy efficiency, and then a third topic area around transportation. But then people wanted to talk about transportation there, and we rolled into the transportation section. You just couldn't keep up with people. Two top priorities really closely aligned here and close in the number of people who wanted to talk about them. Support for public transportation and support for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. These are responses primarily from our roundtable. I would say that when you take this together with what we saw in our surveys and other input activities, people love the bicycle and pedestrian network in Williston. They want to see it filled in. They want to see it made more continuous. They want to see existing sections improved. And probably that one rises a little bit above public transportation when we take everything in. But those were the two that we saw there. We also asked about facilities, parks, and programs, and no surprise here because it was already a conversation happening. The number one thing people wanted to talk about was having a community center. So efforts around that, are ongoing. and then generally just wanting, more community spaces and programs. I'll just briefly mention, if you get deeper into this report, I'm about 40 pages in here. We did tally up all of those other survey responses as well. We had 333 responses to our survey. Nice, easy number to remember. And you can see responses to some of those questions here. And we sort of tried to, even when we had an open-ended question where someone could write a whole paragraph response, we did tally those up, asking ourselves whether that comment was predominantly positive, negative, or neutral, and what was the main topic that somebody wanted to talk about when they responded. So you can see these toted up here, or you can, if you want, go to Williston2050.com and download a giant PDF and read every single thing that somebody had to say about the town of Williston. And then we have some maps, because planners love maps. We asked people questions about those things, and we did tally up those postcard responses as well, and you can come see that. So that's the town plan. We're using this public input to work on those chapters. We're also making those chapters available for people to see or to come to the planning commission and talk about. We are hoping to have a text level, in other words, not a pretty looking town plan, but a text draft of this plan that's reasonably complete by the mid-fall, so we can start talking about the high points of it with the select board. The big thing that comes out of all these topic areas, besides describing what's going on and what's been going on, is a set of goals, objectives, strategies, and actions in each one. The town plan, I was quoted in the Observer recently, is a big giant to-do list. And so what comes out of all of this is, what should the town do over the 8-year period of this plan? And how does it relate to the town's long-range goals of what the people told us they want the town to look like in a distant future in 2050? So that's where we're at with that. Obviously, while we're doing our long-range planning, there are other things going on in town and in the planning office. We're managing current planning and development review and permitting. We're monitoring construction sites that are active right now. And I wanted to talk about a couple things you might see going on out in the world in Williston right now, and then just open up to some questions. So things that we're keeping an eye on that are under construction right now. The annex project on the former proposed site of the Essex Alliance Church is underway. So you may have seen work on the intersection with Alpine Drive and State Route 2A, where there will be a new traffic signal to get people in and out of that project. The public, well, it's private, but the park that will be part of that project is front loaded in the project, meaning that when the first residents move into the annex, the park will be more or less done, including the beginnings of that multi-use path that runs through that property, which will finally connect the north part of Williston up off of Route 2A to Taft Corners with a separated bicycle pedestrian facility. So that facility ends at, Chelsea and Finney right now, and it picks up again at the Bridge to Nowhere by Meadow Run. The annex project will connect those two. If you're right in Taft Corners, obviously the 4-story hotel is up. Windows and siding are starting to go in. They're actually doing some masonry work on the ground floor when I went by yesterday. That hotel is the first thing that was ever permitted under the town's new form-based code, which did allow the additional height, but also required the pitched roof, required the percentage of window area on those facades. So that's why you see a lot of glass on the ground floor, required a lot of the density of doors so that you're not walking around the backside of a hotel when you're on the street. It looks like the front side. And there's a few other elements of that are starting to kind of show up. I would encourage anybody, we had all that humidity a couple of weeks ago and it got really nice. I went out that day that it got really nice. I went over to Healthy Living and bought a sandwich. I went to the little pocket park in front of Railroad in Maine, and I sat on a bench and ate my sandwich in the sun because I hadn't been able to sit in the sun for days. It was so hot. Ate my sandwich and watched people working on that building. And it's remarkable that when you're sitting in that park, that building has enough presence. You don't even realize that Holland Lane is there, that there's a street there. You feel like you're in a bit of an outdoor room. And that was one of the intents of that code, was to create that sense of enclosure in our more urban spaces. Right next door to that hotel, if you were to go on Market Street today, you would see a big foundation in the ground. That is the other building that will fill out the end of Finney Crossing. It's another form-based code project. It's a similar height and dimension residential building. It will have 38 apartment units in it. It has parking underneath. 6 of those 38 units will be deed restricted to be permanently affordable at 100% of the area median income. So this is a project that was responsive both to the changes in the form-based code, as well as some other changes in our zoning that encourage the production and inclusion of affordable housing types in all new projects. So that one will go vertical quite shortly. They will both probably be done and ready for occupancy May of next year. The hotel looks quite done, but it takes a very long time for the inside of hotels to be fit up. It's a lot of sinks and bathrooms and TVs and things like that. So that was our experience with the last one as well. So those are a couple of the big things that are underway. Other large subdivisions like the Glazer project at the corner of Old Stage and Mountain View, which went through our specific plan process, and Summerfield on the side of the Catamount Golf Course are working through various stages of permitting right now at the Act 250 level. They may return to Williston for some final plans. I'm not anticipating seeing dirt moving on either of those this summer, but they're out there. And when we look at their histories, Summerfield, the project on the Catamount Golf Course, came to us first in December of 2019. We're nearly 5 years out from that, and that just speaks to the length of time it takes large projects to work through the permitting phase and other things that happen. So sometimes it's a little bit of a surprise when finally construction starts, but it's worth remembering, oh, we've known that was coming for quite some time. So those are a few of the things that are going on. Lastly, just talking about our commercial districts. I don't know what's going to go into Bed Bath and Beyond. I don't think it will be a Dave and Buster's, which was the rumor. I looked at their franchise website and the size of the market area they want is many times larger than the Chittenden County area. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to go into the Christmas tree shops either. But there's been some inquiries there and the new owners of Maple Tree Place have been working to fill that space. And I do know that the Friendlies will be Burlington Bakery. So I can tell you that at least. And, as much as I might like to see a site like Friendlies completely redeveloped under our new zoning, it's really good news when somebody sees the Taft Corners area as valuable enough to go sink a bunch of money into an existing building and site and put a new business in there. One of the important elements of the economic development chapter that we're writing for the town plan is to continue to make sure there's motivation for people to invest in those kind of properties in town. That's a small local business that will become part of the center of town, that will reuse a site that otherwise could be in a really long slide of decline and kind of was for a couple of years. We want to make sure that those kinds of things are supported and encouraged so that we don't have those sort of, missing teeth in our streetscape. So that's the whirlwind tour of what's up with Williston planning, but I am happy to answer questions about things I may have missed. Charlie.
Do the residential construction projects like Glazer and Summerfield have to meet the new standard that you put in place of percentages of affordable housing?
They will not need to meet those standards. They need to meet the ones they committed to as part of their respective approval processes. So in the Glazer project, there's not an affordability requirement. The specific plan put the emphasis on the open space conservation. And there was a pretty significant conversation with the Planning Commission about balancing those two things. In the Summerfield project, they made a commitment to including affordable units as part of their growth management approval, and also to obtain a density bonus that was applied to that project. And they will need to meet both of those, but it's not quite the 15% of units at 100% area income. It's a little different affordability level and a different percentage for that project, just because it's vested in an older version of our rules.
Thank you.
And
Has every developer that is required to do the affordable housing actually met the bar? In other words, how do you enforce it? And if hypothetically developer doesn't do it, but doesn't have the resources to pay the appropriate compensation, what happens? Have you experienced any of that or concerned?
I am concerned about that, particularly in the environment where interest rates did what they did over the last couple of years, because when you calculate what is the price at which something is affordable and you issue a permit that says, this unit may not sell for more than this price, and then interest rates double across the 18 months it takes to construct that unit.
Yeah.
suddenly the cash price of that home versus what that affordable mortgage payment in has really changed. And our standard covenant that we do with our developers does allow for some adjustment based on those changing conditions. So that keeps us from really just, nailing somebody who experiences those changing conditions. But it is a big concern. And I think another part of your question is sort of, what if somebody builds all their market rate units, but doesn't meet their commitment to build their affordable
And then
units?
leaves the area.
Right. So we haven't had that. I haven't had that as a concern. There are some ways we can do things administratively with our existing projects, like say, no more permits or COs for market rate units until an affordable unit gets underway. But we've actually formalized that more. Our recent bylaw changes that adjusted the way we require the inclusion of affordable homes have more of a build evenly requirement. So, you build 5 market rates, you got to build one of your affordables before you build your next 5 market rates. So we try to build that in, make sure we're not creating a big liability for the town or a future zoning administrator at the end.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
So I have a comment and then a question. The comment is, I did not participate at all in the 2050 thing because in 2050, I expect to be residing in the cremation cemetery down here. But I also had confidence that the people who did participate would be wise. And I think from the results of your report, I was right. Everybody talks about the phrase affordable housing. Is there, for this area, a number for what an affordable house would cost? And how do you arrive at that number? I spoke to someone years ago who was on the DRB, and what he told me the number at that time was considered affordable, didn't sound affordable to me.
Yeah. It never does.
Yeah.
And I can speak to that. So there's a state law and standard federal definition of affordability, which means that for a given household, that household is not spending more than 30% of their income on their housing costs. So for a ownership home, that's mortgage, tax, and insurance. For a rental, it's your rent plus your utilities. So take a household's income, if they're spending more than 30% of that, they're understood to be cost burdened. Many households in Williston are cost burdened. More than not. And if you go to our housing needs assessment that we did about a year ago, you can see some numbers on that. One of the realities of the area we're in, which is what we call the Burlington, South Burlington Metropolitan Statistical Area. It's Franklin County down through Williston and sort of the I-89 corridor. This is a very high income area. We have high income households. So when we take the median income for this area, and we look at spending no more than 30% of that median income on housing, $2,400 a month for a 3-person household. It's about a $409,000 purchase price on a home right now. And don't quote me on these numbers. I haven't looked at them recently, but it's high. It's probably more than many of us are paying on our mortgages. If you're like me, I bought my house in South Burlington in 2008. I see these prices and I go, oh my gosh, I would not be able to live the life I live if that was the mortgage I needed to pay. But that is very much the reality that our new home buyers and our renters are facing at this point. If you go into Zillow, put your house in, put your home address into Zillow, look at what Zillow thinks your house is worth. It's actually pretty accurate. And then imagine you put 20% down today and you're paying, 6.5%, 7% interest on the rest in a mortgage. And ask yourself, what would my life look like if that was the payment I was making? And it really gives you a picture of the magnitude of the challenge. And so then, when we are requiring those affordable units, they still look very, very expensive, but the reality is they are less expensive than what the market would be producing left to its own devices. So we do also have a housing committee that's working on issues of affordability. That regulatory scheme is not the only strategy because that level of quote unquote affordability isn't going to work for everybody. We are looking at putting our housing trust fund, the little bit of money we have set aside to address this issue in Williston, out into the world and to work to help with the deeper affordability as we get down into the, people who make 80% of that median income and lower. talking about things like grants for first-time home buyers in Williston, short-term assistance for someone who becomes cost burden, because of a medical issue or a job loss or something like that. Talking about finding ways to find distressed properties that the town can assist in getting into the hands of somebody like a Habitat or a Champlain Housing Trust who can rehabilitate them to create that much more affordable housing. But once we get below affordable at 80% median, we're really talking about development that needs to access federal programs, federal funding, or tax incentive programs. It's got to be subsidized to bring that to market at this point. So.
Is there an affordability issue with rentals in Williston? It seems like they're sky high, and someone graduating from college, they have to have a roommate or two roommates in order to afford an apartment in Williston.
Yeah, rentals are expensive in Williston. Rentals are expensive everywhere. As recently as 6 months ago, we had a 0.9% rental vacancy rate here, where 5% is considered a healthy rate. So it's a landlord's market right now because there's just not very much supply. What I will say about rentals that's interesting is when they are brand new, that price is very high. But the rental price tends to descend fairly rapidly as more stuff comes into the market. So developers who make commitments to providing those affordable units, we have some affordable rentals that we're committed to in Finney Crossing, and we do annual monitoring on that. So we go to the landlord and say, okay, what are you charging for rent in these units that you promised would be affordable? And we had units promised that would be affordable at that 100% median income level that were built 7 or 8 years ago now. Our audits find that those units have now come down to be affordable to somebody who's making 80% of the median income. And most of the market rate units that we're not actually regulating the price on have, started at 120 or 130% income, have come down a hair below 100%. So there's a filtering thing that happens when there's supply in the pipeline that takes a little bit of the sting out of that. But region-wide, UVM wouldn't be building housing for nurses and grad students if there wasn't a shortage. The UVM, the hospital, is looking at a situation and say, we're paying all this money for travel nurses and staff, and it's literally cheaper to become a developer and build homes for them than it is to pay for that workforce. So we're still in a very, very tight environment.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have you, and we always learn.
You gotta go, you gotta go.
You get-
I gotta draw, I
get
gotta
the
draw.
raffle ticket. And then Ted has something to say to you too.
All right,
All right,
I
come
have,
on.
Last 3 digits.
Yeah.
last 3 digits are 749.
Oh,
Oh,
that's 749. And Ted?
I didn't have breakfast.
As a thank you, we are making a donation in your name to the Williston Central School Mentoring Program.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Great as always. And Gary, are you ready to be inspiring?
Oh, I am.
All right. Awesome.
That move right there should have been inspiring to all of you.
It was.
Old people can still move. When Elizabeth asked me to do this, I did the standard, I went and looked at the Rotary magazine. And I find that doing that gives me 2 sides of a story. I look at it, I'm proud of all the things that are going on in the world. I feel inspired by the activities that other people do. And then by the time I get to the end, I'm depressed because I'm saying, what am I doing? I'm sitting here reading a magazine in the middle of my freaking kitchen in Williston, Vermont. So it's one of those dichotomous kinds of things. So for inspiration today, I'd like to do a couple of things that I don't often do. Here's the first one. While digesting Reader's Digest at the back of a dirty bookstore, an American flag with gum on the back fell out on the floor. Picked it up, ran outside, and stuck it on my window shield. Said I would wait to see Betsy Ross and tell her how good I feel. But your American flag won't get you into heaven anymore. It's already overcrowded from your dirty little wars. Jesus don't like killing, no matter what the reason for, so your American flag won't get you into heaven anymore. And now I'd like to tell you about a few people that are gonna get there. The first one is Jimmy Carter. He came up the other day as, I don't know, on the radio, on the television, somewhere. The man's 99 years old. He is in hospice, but like his grandson says, he has days where he's clear and he has days where he sleeps. So I'm there and I'm 77. Yeah, good for him. The reason he's going to get into heaven, he was faithful and loved a woman for 77 years. What the heck is that all about? That'll get him some kind of credo in this world, I'll tell you that right now. The next person that I'd like you to think about, if you want to be inspired, is Madeline Cunin. Madeline sort of faded away. Madeline was a Jewish daughter of a pair of immigrants after the Holocaust, a Jewish female Democrat who was elected governor in our state 3 times. 3 times in a Republican state, for crying out loud. What is this? You know, a Jewish American female elected governor of Vermont 3 times. That's inspirational. George Aiken. Some of you remember George, not all of you do. George was a senator from Vermont who had a solution to the Vietnam War, of which I was very ready to be inspired by. His solution was claim victory and come home. End of discussion. Call it a win and come home. Thank you, George. James Jeffords. Not many of you probably remember that name, but if you do, you'll remember a staunch Republican. This is a Republican state. It always has been. He was a staunch Republican who got to the point in his political career where he said, I can't do this anymore. I can't take what used to be a party of the people, of working for the people of the state, and now it's a party of politicians working for their own good. Quit the Republican Party, became an independent, caucused with the Democrats. And then 2 guys that I know, there's only 2 other people in this room know anything about them, and that's the Hookers. Dr. Hooker and his son ran a Saturday night, Saturday night conference for people that needed to help in figuring out how to deal with the Selective Service Board of the United States down in Wells River, Vermont. Dr. Hooker is somebody that should be inspirational to us all. They put their careers on the line for a few boys. Those are my boys. So I'll close you with a song, another John Prine song. You know that old trees just grow stronger and rivers grow wilder every day. Old people just grow lonesome, waiting for someone to say, hello in there, hello. So if you're walking down the street sometime and spot some hollow, vacant eyes, please don't just pass them by and stare. As if you didn't care. Say hello in there, hello.
Beautiful.
I always try.
One of the many reasons we love
Just the way it works, you know.
Arden, what your minute?
Tough act to follow there, neighbor.
So.
If any of you are sitting around the kitchen reading the Rotarian and are looking for something to do, yeah, the new access area needs a little attention. I have vacancies. Leslie and I have done it 4 times already. We've got 1 more to go. John Jacob needs help on August 15th. If someone can contact him, join up with him. He's never done it, so he's not sure what he needs. So, anyone interested in doing that with John?
Is this for, you're saying for doing, wants to do the canoe area?
Yeah,
Say the date again. I'm sorry.
mowing and string trimming,
Yeah.
path,
I think it's August 15th. Did you say August 15th?
August 15th. And I also, Marty is doing it on September 1st. He was looking for some assistance also. Somebody can call him. I'm gonna be out of town, so I won't be able to do it. So
I'll do that on the first. You said the first?
the 15th with John Jacobs,
No, the
September
September one.
1st.
September 1st with Marty.
Yeah,
Okay,
I can do that one.
thank you. And
I should be able to do the August 15th with John. Are you gonna tell him?
August
Are you
15th,
gonna contact him so we can get hold of me?
I will, yes,
All right.
okay, okay, and I still have September 15th, nobody on the 15th, so if someone could do that. Chris, okay, thank you. You need help, you want? If someone that hasn't done it and doesn't have the equipment wants to join up with Chris, that would be great.
You know, I signed up to
Thank
help
you, Andrew.
learn how, and nobody has ever called me. Is it age discrimination?
No, I think you were absent the day I did this, way back, but
No, you passed a sheet out and you said anybody that hasn't done it, that wants to learn how, sign up at the bottom of the sheet. And
oh,
I
you did, you were right here.
Yeah,
Would you like to join up with
anybody,
you, Andrew, and Chris?
sure. You know, I
Right
do
beside you,
have a
talk to him.
chainsaw, the weed whacker.
All right,
You're
all right. I'm gonna- All right, thank you. That filled it up, and I'll do the last one October 1st, which will be the final cleanup. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about is Halloween. You're probably saying, we just had the 4th of July. What do you know? I got an email from Todd at the rec department. At first, he told me he wanted to be more involved in it, and then it turns out he was suggesting he needs a date because he wants to put it in the fall, winter rec bulletin. So I'm kind of looking at the 27th, which is a Sunday, 27th of October. Anyone have any thoughts on that? It is quite a ways from, I think Halloween's on a Thursday or Friday.
But we've always done it on the Sunday before.
We've always done it on
so
Sunday.
Might as well keep with that tradition, I think.
That was my thought.
Yeah.
Also, Carol Bouchard mentioned that the last hour, half hour is usually pretty quiet. There's hardly anybody there. She made the suggestion, maybe an hour and a half instead of 2 hours. So maybe 2:30 to 4.
They seem to get in early and then kind of peters right out.
Yeah. So everybody's good with that? All right, so I'll pass that on to Todd. And Todd also is suggesting that we have it at the community park. He said we could line up the cars up towards the gate where you enter the park. We could, and then the rest of the park, the parking lot would be for vehicles. And there's 85 to 90 parking spaces there, so it is pretty large. And it might be a little safer.
Where we have a race.
Oh, okay.
So people could go up one side and down the other and.
Well, or just the upper end, let's say if we took the upper third of the park, and that's where the trunk or treaters would be, then the public could park at the approach. And there's also another 40 or so parking spaces behind the brick church if they were needed.
And their
So,
restroom.
and the restrooms, he also mentioned that restrooms would be a good thing. So if everyone's in agreement, we'll say the 27th, 3:30 to
2:30 to 4.
3:30 to 4 at the village community park.
I'm on the, still hearing some discrepancy regarding the time, so let's just be very clear about the time.
2:30 to 4.
2:30 to 4, yeah, an hour and a half.
And will you be communicating with Todd and
I will.
Carol?
I will, yeah, because he needed this first.
Did you want to talk about the trash at the access area?
Yeah, when I'm cleaning up down there, people that fish down there leave their styrofoam nightcrawler container, their beer can, their trash on the water's edge. And if it's not picked up, guess where that all goes? You know, in the lake. And I don't know if there's some way we could make the public aware of that. I don't know if we want to get into a sign and get into, you know,
Yeah.
an ad or something. It's just, you know, there was a lot of them. I picked up one day, you know, beer cans and nightcrawler containers and fishing line tangled up in the bushes and stuff like that. It all ends up in the lake.
It might actually be easier to place some kind of a trash barrel there and say, please use the trash barrel, and then we maintain the trash barrel. It might be easier than picking it up in individual spaces, although I would say some people won't pay any attention to that also.
Well, the trash barrel would have to get in the parking lot because it'll wash away. It'll end up in the lake. And then I'm also afraid that people are gonna put their household stuff in there, and then we get a whole bunch of trash.
Yeah. Put down a barrel.
Yeah, clean out their car. So.
right. Well, let's think about that. So we have a bunch more things we have to do today.
Okay,
Walter?
thank you all.
Basically, I've been working on getting the benches ready, and they're almost all sanded down. And the next step is to basically, next week we will have a sign up, and next week I'm hoping that we'll have the paint here so that we have at least 3 kits that we can give to people and let them take it out for the meeting and then bring it back. The question will be is, where do we store it in Williston? Where do we store the paints? Because I'm in Bolton and the road's a mess. So I don't think anybody wants to drive there. So just think about if you're willing to host a couple of containers that. Okay, so.
I have some at my office left over from previous years.
Okay,
Some stain, as a milk crate with some stain and sandpapers and brushes.
right, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for anything we've got. So that we don't have to buy it all. We can just.
Right, well, I have to get that to you today or tomorrow because I'm gonna be gone for the next week.
So in your place over,
The storage facility, yeah. I could put it, it's summertime. I can put it in the storage unit now. I keep it in my office in the wintertime.
I have to come back to Wilson this afternoon anyway.
I'll put it in the storage unit in case I'm not there. You know the combination? 0517, and it's unit 27.
Okay, okay.
I'll text it to you.
So next week, we'll have sign up. We should have paints and stains here. The only thing that is, kind of puzzling is the Allenbrook 3 benches. I think, when we're talking that the bridge may be down, so you can't get to them right now, but we can do all the other ones.
There is an access through, that new street
Right.
on north.
And the question is, is that the way we should access it, or should they access it through the regular routes that people walk on?
Because what?
But anyways.
Have you talked to Eric about those benches?
Well, we don't know what facility. though. But I didn't get the name.
Okay, so any questions?
Right, Vince?
Oh, this is not recorded anyway. Huh? What it is? No.
I got a second inspiration for this morning. And it's Paul Harris. So, good morning. The presentation of Paul Harris recognizes the Rotary Foundation's way of expressing its appreciation for substantial contribution to humanity and educational programs, named for its founder, the lawyer Paul Harris, who started the organization in 1905. A world of peace and goodwill comes closer to reality today as Jeannie Albertson becomes a Paul Harris Fellow. The foundation's education yeah, come on up, Jeannie. Get this you first. The foundation's education and humanitarian programs is a commitment to peace, to a better life for people, and its membership of the club will never meet. It's because of gifts to the foundation that carry out an array of programs to beneficial changes in the world, improving living conditions, increasing food production, better education, wider ability for the sick and disabled, new channels for better international understanding, and brighter hopes for the peace. In becoming a Paul Harris Fellow, Jeannie joins a remarkable group of people across the world. They are recognized for their devotion to the idea of goodwill, peace, and understanding, a goal of Rotarians the world over, and one that Jeannie clearly shares. It gives me great pleasure to present you with the emblem of appreciation given to the Paul Harris Fellow, the certificate and pin. We congratulate you and thank you for your commitment to the foundation. Paul Harris said, "He who tries to find the good in others will be rewarded, for others find the good in him." Please rise and join me in recognizing our newest Paul Harris Fellow.
Thank you, photo. Look this way, then.
Awesome.
I did it, no, I didn't, I ate so I came.
Okay, we ran a bit short on time, so you keep your fine stuff brief.
I thought you told me to say that. So 30 seconds or less, get to the point. We don't want to hear about your cat, your dog, your grandchildren, your football team.
You just want the money.
We get no money. Anyhow, I have been asked to keep these a little shorter, and I know we all have really great stories myself. So we'll start down here.